Hi, we are from Econs 4214 and we would like to present our presentation to discuss about the evaluation, the impact of poverty and inequality during the COVID-19. Before our presentation, I would like to introduce our members, me, myself, Tan King Ling, Ang Junyi, Kormin, and Hong Wun Shi. As you can see from the slides, the COVID-19 pandemic is estimated to push an additional 88 million to 115 million people into extreme poverty this year, with the total rising to as many as 150 million by 2021, depending on the severity of the economic contraction. More will get into poverty because of COVID. The poor will also get poorer. The more severe impact to the poor would come from the economic impact. During COVID-19 pandemic, policies such as lockdown to avoid social contact had resulted in global economy to fall into recession. Many businesses were forced to close down, which resulted in a rise in unemployment. For example, cleaners in entertainment outlets are not needed anymore, as bars, pubs, or KTV are not allowed to open till date. This impact in a loss of job as well as a loss of income. When there are lockdowns, companies also let out the motivation or the means to hire the workers. Lower demand and recessionary sentiment in the market would result in lower intention to hire workers. This means that seeking a job is actually a hard task too. For many in poverty, they are illiterate and may not educated in being aware of danger of COVID. They are hence vulnerable to the pandemic too. They also lack the means and money to purchase protective gear such as masks and sanitizers. This make them in higher danger in compared to normal people. Also, access to vaccine in remote areas are low. In the scope of technology, many in poverty are not digitally literate as well as do not own digital device. When COVID-19 would largely transform the world into a digital landscape, the poor are left out in this digital divide. Finally, the eventual impact would be that a lot of people, especially the poor with low-skilled job, will lose their job. They will lose their income. This means that they will experience trouble such as hunger, as well as inability to purchase necessities for personal needs. For example, personal hygiene products, they will be in they will be in a dire situation. Many will also experience mental health depression and to severe level of suicide. As a conclusion, the pandemic has a very large impact on vulnerable poor. This is a real need towards addressing the problem.
Hi, Namsuti. I will continue the effect of COVID-19 to global poverty. First of all, COVID-19 will lead to poor education of citizens. Not every person without an education is living in extreme poverty, but most of the extreme poor don't have an education. COVID-19 is one of the barriers to education around the world, including a lack of money for uniform and books. Lockdown also caused people not allowed to school and did online learning. This will cause some poor person that without an electronic device like laptop or smartphone will face challenges on their education. Education is often referred to as the great equalizer because it can open the doors to job and other resources and skills that a family needs to not just survive but thrive. UNESCO estimates that 171 million people would be lifted out of extreme poverty if they lack school basic reading skills. Poverty threatens education, but education can also help end poverty. People who are poor are more likely to suffer from bad health, and especially COVID-19, and those with bad health are more likely to be poor. It's because healthcare is often too expensive or inaccessible to those who need it. Without money for medicine and treatment, the poor have to make really tough decisions and usually essentials like food temporarily. COVID-19 caused single and then they cannot work, which makes the situation even more serious. If people do seek treatment, the cost often lose their finance. It's a vicious cycle. Besides, food supply chain disruption caused by COVID-19 are also affecting food security. Stable food production in high-income countries has been relatively little affected, whereby labor-intensive activity in some market and processing activity have been strongly affected by disease outbreak. Another key point of breakdown has been in processing of some agricultural products, and particularly production of meat, where low temperature and proximity occur can result in very high rate of disease transmission. Other disruptions to food supply chains have come from restriction of the movement of workers, the dramatic reduction in international air travel, and slowdown in the administrative approval for food trade. At the consumer end, restaurant service have been particularly hard hit both by lockdown policy and by consumer risk aversion. By this lockdown of COVID-19, many who lost jobs include waiter, chef, cashier, or restaurant hawker, and some jobs that related to food supply. This will cause the poverty of them. The global economic downturn, extensive containment measures, and inadequate social protection have made a significant drop in income for many in the developing world. Of those surveyed, 80% in Rwanda, 65% in Cote d'Ivoire, 41% in Ghana, and 20% in Colombia reported earning less than before the pandemic. More than 85% of Senegalese survey respondents reported a reduction in income, which was particularly acute for those outside Dakar and with less education. As of late August, households in Siaya country reported receiving less income support compared to late April. With lower income, many have resorted to an alternative means to sustain their livelihood. Since April, households in Sierra Leone have increasingly depleted savings, sold assets, and acquired debt. In Cote d'Ivoire, 70% of respondents has used their savings to pay for food, and 80% of respondents in Rwanda have done the same for food, healthcare, or other expenses. For this household, economic security was worse, leaving them extremely vulnerable to future shocks, such as further lockdown. In Ghana, 29% of respondents reported that would not be able to access approximately US 87 for an emergency, while 50% in Colombia reported that they would not have access to US $270. Okay, that's all.
I'm Comin, and now I'll be talking about income inequality. The proportion to which income is distributed unequally throughout a population is referred to as income inequality. The more unequal the distribution, the greater the income inequality. According to a survey of 33 countries, 3 out of 4 households have seen their income fall since the pandemic began, with 82% of poorer households being affected. The effects on various societies are entirely dependent on their different conditions. Since the pandemic, almost 2 million additional households in the United States have stated that they do not have enough to eat. Also, 1 out of every 5 African American homes say they are going hungry. The pandemic is a windfall for the super rich. The stock market incredible increase is a proof of this. Between April and June 2020, about 44 million people in the United States lost their jobs, with unemployment reaching 15%. Despite this, the fortunes of the top 5 billionaires increased by 102 billion, a 26% increase in their wealth. Moreover, the combined wealth of US billionaires increased by over 637 billion to 3.6 trillion, which is significantly more than the combined wealth of the 54 African countries. Those with large stakes in the IT sector are one of the biggest winners. The lockdowns and the change to remote work have benefited digital retail sellers, conferencing platforms, and social media groups. Next, gender inequality. Uneven behavior or perception of people based on their gender are referred to as gender inequality. The poor, elderly, disabled, and migrating groups, as well as women, have suffered at the hands of pandemic impact. Despite making up under half of the workforce in the United States, women accounted for 55% of all work losses. In the United Kingdom, women work nearly one-third more than likely than males to work in the clothes industry. When they had the option to continue working, mothers were 1.5 times more likely to stop work than fathers. The greater loss highlight the fact that women were more likely to work in the services that were closed down, such as catering and hospitality. Gender equality is expected to be affected by these tendencies. Due to the sensitivity of sectors like construction and manufacturing to economic cycles, males have suffered the brunt of employment losses in earlier recession. Women employment, on the other hand, was more stable. This time, however, things are different. The COVID-19 pandemic has primarily impacted consumer-facing industry, such as small businesses, restaurants, and airlines. In the United Kingdom, for example, mothers are responsible for almost two-thirds of the additional 40 hours of caring and childcare per week. Mothers who work at home are 50% more likely than men to be distracted. Next, social inequality wasn't the COVID-19. To begin with, inequality increases the chances that those who contract the virus will spread it, and while those at the bottom of social hierarchy are more likely to contract it. Everyone is at a danger. Second, social inequality increases the burden on health system during pandemic waves, putting anyone who requires hospitalization for any reason at increased risk. Third, social inequality has created pressure to leave social distancing decision too quickly, which puts all of the us at risk of a second wave and subsequent waves. It does seem reasonable to assume that social inequality increased in the first wave of COVID-19 pandemic in the US. This is due to the fact that social inequality has an impact on the distribution of epidemiologic risk and protective variables, making the new coronavirus more likely to spread. People with limited access to high-quality health information, for example, were less knowledgeable about the need for social distancing and hand washing early in the pandemic. Lower salaries made it harder to avoid social contact by getting groceries online or remaining at home from work as the pandemic worsened. Decades of stagnant public housing and transportation have also increased the probability that persons of lower socio-economic position living in big cities will live and go to work in crowded conditions, exposing them to even more risk. They are also the ones who are least able to maintain social distance, stay at home from work, and keep disease from spreading to others. As a result of social inequality, the pandemic expanded faster and reached a higher peak than would be predicted in a more equal society. Even before the first wave of pandemic in the United States began to flatten and subside, the pressure to reopen the economy was increasing. Although reopening to some extent is reasonable, resuming economic activity too quickly, on the other hand, increased the risk and severity of subsequent waves, and high levels of inequality enhance the urge to do so. That's all from my part. Thank you.
I'm Wenshi, and I'm going to present ethic inequality. This inequality is likely to be driven by structural and institutional that result in different social conditions such as occupation and housing, in differentiate access to healthcare. Budget cuts to public health have disproportionate effect monetary ethic population. For example, there has been no concert action to better protect monetary ethic communities from COVID-19. Such the evident the task of communicating and translate public health message has largely been left to voluntary group, and under such local authority ethic, these practices in COVID-19 are a manifestation for longer negligence. Many minority ethnic individuals find it hard to self-isolate because of the conditions in which they live and work. For example, in England, Bangladesh and Black Africans households also have only £10 for every in saving per white British household, and are more likely to expect difficult pay their bills in coming months, meaning that taking time off work to self-isolate is often unavoidable. Self-isolation is already difficult less than 20% of people with COVID-19. But poor housing and financial perception make it almost impossible without additional support. The second point is inequality increasing between countries. Lower and medium income countries' overseas aid budget are contracting. Overseas aid budget are contracting since they are typically calculated as a share of rich national income. When the donate economy contract, so does aid. For example, in 2020 is down several billion pounds for previous year. Lower income countries support their citizens and business is much lower. Roughly of workers worldwide still work in informal section, while the stringency of the lockdown in lower and medium income countries match and in many cases exceeds those of rich countries. Their governments are far less able to support their citizens and farm. The next point is the mortality burden of the pandemic is positive correlate with national income. For example, Thailand there is nonetheless a clearly positive association. Richer countries suffer greater loss of life year per capita than poorer countries. Measure the error is likely sustained with a number of poor countries essentially using age and test that the mortality burden of the pandemic is positively correlated with national income per capita, despite the superior health and public prevention system in rich countries. The last inequality is labor market inequality, unemployment into the inactive or marginal attract population. A large part of the suggest of unemployment is due to the large increase in country. The largest number of temporary layoffs of this country, lack of the employment because company closed and sent frontline workers home. During the COVID-19 crisis, job opportunities were severely limited. The large increase in temporary unemployment and workers work reduced hours or not working at all, maintaining their employee contract is likely to have contributed to a future unusual feature of COVID-19 induced crisis. Those on temporary layoff in particular have the potential to distort traditional measures of labor market. The last point is translating into mass unemployment, seeking to minimize job loss and allow firms experiencing a temporary in business to receive support for significant share of wage of employment working reduced hours, the increased coverage of section and firm, their increase their generosity and the lower the associate conditionally in effort to minimize job loss and enable a quick resumption of economic activity when the business closure comes to the end. That's all group 8 presentation. Thank you.